Hello, this is QTV News. I am Mamudu Gajaga and thank you for joining us. Coming up tonight, first we give you our main local, international and sports news headlines. QTV went out to hear the public's view on the apparent increase in serious crime. The Gambia 2019-2020 Demographic and Health Survey findings, an important tool for planning, was launched today at an event attended by the Vice President and government ministers. The Director of Communications at the Independent Electoral Commission tells QTV that preparations are at an advanced stage for commencement of the voter registration. In international news, the International Criminal Police Organization Interpol reveals details of huge drug seizures in Africa and the Middle East. In sports news, in the absence of school sporting competitions, we hear how some athletes are finally returning to competitive sport. Those were the main news headlines, and now the news in detail. Thanks for joining us. Welcome and thank you if you're just joining us. This is QTV News. Following the recent apparent increase in reports of serious crime, including murder, rape and robberies, QTV's Ajibintu Drame went out to seek public opinion on this. And this is our report.
Hardly a day passes without reports of some sort of crime on TV, in the newspapers and on social media. The claim is that these crimes were not that common in the Gambia, and many are now worried as to why this is happening. There has also been a debate about whether there are more crimes or that society has changed, and many things get shared, especially on social media. Politicians from all parties have also added their voices to those expressing concern over this alleged recent crime wave. When we went seeking people's opinion, Dennis Kamara, a Sierra Leonean who has spent almost all his life in the Gambia, expressed what seems to be a common view. He says the recent crime situation in the country is quite worrying compared to previous years.
Security situation in Gambia now is very bad because it's happened to me so many times. Sometimes I go out, when I'm coming home, they must attack me. The last time even they have to take my phones, my bag, everything. I went to police station to report. I even give them they said if I have the ID of the phone, I give them everything. But to no avail, I cannot get anything from them.
Dennis takes precautions by choosing to stay at home during the night, or when he does go out, not to stay out too late. Two people who did not want to be on camera also expressed frustration over the alarming situation. One of them said that last week, $30,000 was stolen from him. The other man said thefts and robberies are becoming common due to the closure of the tourist season for over a year. As such, many youths are unemployed. However, he added that the security of the country is still questionable. Fatou Faye, who lives in Cape Point in Bakau, also echoed the view that a lack of employment is the cause of the frequent thefts. However, Fatou says there are frequent police patrol in her areas, and that has deterred criminals operating there. However, following the recent reports of crimes, particularly murders, she says she fears for her life and that of her children.
Security is lacking. Imagine 8-year-old children are raped. What can the government do about it? My daughter goes to school in the afternoon. If she does not come home, I am always restless. I am pleading with the government for proper security. This is beyond outrageous because you will be at home and they will kill you there.
Kumba Bari, a concerned resident, also had this to say.
In the
past, one could be in the street freely for 24/7 without any harm. In the early hours of the morning, we would go to the market. We walk on foot from Bantaba to the Serekunda market. But now, we cannot do that. Sometimes, if we do that, we have to look over our shoulders. It's difficult.
From what we have seen and heard from the people, even if the statistics show there has not been an increase, the perception that there has should be a great concern to the authorities. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
Now, the Gambia Bureau of Statistics, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, Social Welfare and the Global Demographic and Health Survey Programs and partners on Tuesday, launched the Gambia 2019-2020 Demographic and Health Survey findings. Loli M. Camara attended the ceremony and she now reports.
The survey's launching brought together key development partners from the government, UN agencies and NGOs to discuss and give recommendations on the finding of the survey and the way forward. The results of the 5-year project will assist Gambia in collecting and analyzing data needed to plan, monitor and evaluate population, health and nutrition programs. Delivering her launching statement, the Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Toure, thanked stakeholders who contributed to the survey's success. She affirmed that the project is highly significant to the government.
His Excellency the President was in the forefront to ensure that resources are available to implement this survey, and thanks to Allah that it has been successfully conducted and that I am here with you today on his behalf to launch the report. And the government of the Gambia will henceforth ensure that it is conducted regularly at 3 years interval as the equally important survey, the multiple indicator cluster survey mix.
The Statistician General at Gambia Bureau of Statistics, Nyakasi MB Sayang, explains how the survey was conducted and also the way forward.
We will first intensify the dissemination aspect of it. We will ensure that this information is disseminated at the lowest level. From here, we will go to the regions where we will meet the regional heads and institutions there, and we will share this information from there.
Dr. Ahmadu Lamin Samatha, the Minister of Health, said the steps taken by GBOS and implementing partners in conducting the survey will help guide his ministry in strengthening key areas of interventions. Dr. Samatha also stated his ministry's plan for the women.
There is a lot of improvement. We will strengthen that, like we're building more theaters in the country. We have started that process. We have also started upgrading some facilities from being minor health facilities to become major health facilities, whereby they can offer cesarean sections in time, so that women do not have to wait in labor for a long time. And that will, inshallah, increase the survival chances of the women and also the children, the newly born children. But you also realize that we also mentioned the issue of the community ambulances. These ambulances under the direct instruction of His Excellency, whereby, inshallah, 70 more ambulances for the country.
The Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Mambu Njai, and UNFPA country representative to the Gambia, Kule Adenyi, both gave their views on the survey report.
The Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs will continue to support statistical capacity building aimed at enabling our statistics system adequately respond to our national data requirement.
For us at UNFPA, we're already working with our regional office and the Ministry of Finance on investment cases. What do we need to do? How do we translate these results into valid programs to make sure that we end all preventable maternal deaths in the Gambia? We made the amendment for family planning, and indeed, very importantly, we end every form of gender-based violence against our women and girls, including female genital mutilation and child marriage.
Dr. Zerick Smith, a representative from the United States Agency for International Development, Sahel Regional Office in Senegal, outlined the support UN needs towards the successful completion of the survey, adding that the U.S. government have supported the project with $400,000. The survey is a major data source for the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals indicators, and it is expected to serve a major role in furthering international understanding of global population and health trends. For QTV News, Loli M. Camara.
Now, the Director of Communications at the Independent Electoral Commission, Pa Makan Khan, on Tuesday told QTV that preparations are at an advanced stage for the commencement of voter registrations across the country. Alusisa reports.
According to the IEC, the voter registration process is scheduled to last from 29 May to 11 July 2021. Gambians will head to the polls on December 4th to vote in a presidential election. the IEC is currently undertaking a training exercise for registration officers ahead of deployment across the country. The training is centered on the IEC laws and the manual of the Electoral Service International, the company recruited to conduct the election exercise, for the participants' better understanding on how to operate the equipment and understand the software. The IEC had postponed the commencement of the general voter registration initially slated for January 14 this year. The electoral body cited logistical challenges beyond its control as its main reason for suspending the exercise. Parmakan Khan, Director of Communication at the IEC, explains that the training is part of the preparations for a successful exercise.
This training exercise lasts until the 25th of May. Then the 26th, 7th and 8th, we'll take those 3 days to deploy the teams around the country. So you know we have 220 teams to deploy around the 7 regions of the country. This is why we thought that it will be necessary to have at least 3 days during which we can deploy all these teams to the various regions. So far, so good. No worries for now, because the training program have gone so well. We've trained almost half of the staff, and then we get to receive the other half. That's from the regions of Kanifing, Kerewan, Brikama, and Mansakonko. So those that we've trained so far have been very successful. They are very much conversant with the software being used. So I think for now, so good.
Yankuba Dabo and Aisa Jallo are among the participants who will be deployed to conduct the exercise. They share with QTV what they have learned.
Actually, it's going well because we have been trained on all aspects of registration. We are trained on how to be with the people in the various communities, as we are not from the same home. At the same time, also, we were given the capacity to know exactly how to operate the machines that are going to be used during the registration.
They have trained us on ethics, because it's also important. We are all here from various communities. We are going out there to have interaction with others. So it's also important to have the experienced people come here and tell us how to interact with people. They're also showing us how to help people that are coming for the voters card, how to help them use their thumbprint and how to have their photos and how to edit and the likes.
At its conclusion, the registration process will issue voters cards to eligible Gambians with recognized national documents such as a birth certificate, a Gambian passport, a national ID card, or a document certified by district chief or an alcalde of the village of birth of the applicant, stating he or she was born in the district or village. Also, all voters must have or will have attained the age of 18 by 4 December 2021. Gambians within and outside the country are therefore encouraged to register to be able to vote on December 4th. At the time of the last presidential election, there were 886,578 registered voters with 1,422 polling stations across the country. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cissé.
From that report by Aliou Cissé, we will take a short commercial break, but still to come, we have another local story for you, international and sports news.
Initial reaction was twofold.
Is it the principle itself you object to, or the timing?
You hear in the news that our lawmakers have decided conveniently.
What was your reaction when you heard this judgment by the Supreme Court?
I felt like the more I do, the more I am found to be defending a wrong. Argued that we should increase our allowances.
Do you in any way regret voting in favor of that law?
The judiciary would never intervene in that abuse because it's not their role.
The ruling is not saying that MPs are not entitled.
With us, where does sovereignty lie?
You've a fundamental question.
Why can't you just go to the bank and take a loan like anyone else is doing?
The National Assembly is not able to do its job because members are poor, the institution is poor.
Some years ago, your parliament also received vehicles from an anonymous donor.
We agreed to put $84 million in.
Just mentioned something fascinating there.
State of Affairs, airing on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. on QTV.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is QTV News. In anticipation of the TRRC's final report and recommendations, the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa Tuesday brought together local and international experts, CSOs, human rights activists and victims of enforced disappearances for a 2-day convergence. Ansumana Esunyasu attended the ceremony and he now reports.
With the TRRC set to deliver its final report in July this year, the Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa is leading national and international efforts to galvanize more support for the impartial and full implementation of the Truth Commission's recommendations, especially on enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. Addressing participants, the executive director of the IHRDA, Gay Sow, says his organization will continue to offer its unwavering support to the country's transitional justice process, especially in the aftermath of the TRRC's final report. And he went on to highlight how his organization's advocacy work led to a change of constitution in Malawi and the abandoning of some key unhealthy policies in Sierra Leone.
Coming up with a law criminalizing enforced disappearances, for me that is key. I hope before the end of the meeting today we would have that maybe recommended very, very strongly, because we've had, efforts undertaken by the current government reviewing our criminal code, our criminal procedure code. There is also a prohibition of torture bill, but that bit, of course, still missing. What is the bit? Making sure the Gambia has a law that criminalizes enforced disappearances.
The Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Dauda A. Jallow, says thanks to the TRRC, the Gambia's history and experience with enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings has been well documented.
We have had some successes in this journey. It is important that we share what works and build on for the better results. You will be pleased to know that my ministry has completed and submitted the first ever report on the OHCHR Committee on Enforced Disappearances.
Ian Brown, EU Delegation, Governance, and John Charles Njai, a participant, both emphasized the importance of this 2-day gathering and cautioned against the non- or partial implementation of TRRC recommendations, which they say could have a lasting impact that may defeat the reasons for establishing the Truth Commission.
What the hearings have revealed and continue to reveal is the unpeeling of a layer of barely believable horror. I think the Sierra Leonean/Gambian writer Ade Darami put it the best. The truth has been far more gruesome than the whispered rumors of the past.
It is good for us to have a national conversation of how do we implement the recommendations of the TRRC, how do we ensure that the never again slogan doesn't just remain a slogan, but it becomes our reality.
About 30 participants, including foreign-based experts, are also participating via Zoom, and some are expected to deliver presentations on their experience and findings on enforced disappearances in their respective countries. The TRRC has so far recorded and investigated at least 35 cases of enforced disappearances and has been able to exhume 7 bodies that had been buried at Union Barracks since November 1994, after family members of those suspected to be buried there were contacted and their consent obtained. However, the Commission is yet to conduct DNA tests to identify the bodies exhumed. And during this 2-day gathering, participants are expected to look into some of the challenges involved in investigating such cases and how to address them. The Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa is a pan-African non-governmental organization working to promote awareness of human rights in Africa and improve the effectiveness of the African human rights system. Ansumana Esunyasu for KTV News.
Now, the University of the Gambia today hosted a delegation from Senegal's University of Assane Seck de Ziguinchor for a meeting to devise a consortium of 4 universities in the West African sub-region. Modou Lamin Choi has the details.
Universities with close geographical proximity in West Africa are coming together to foster ties and devise measures for a concerted effort to address their collective aspirations through a consortium. The consortium will include 4 universities from the Gambia, Senegal, Cabo Verde, and Guinea-Bissau. As part of the journey towards their objective, the University of Assane Seck de Ziguinchor and the University of the Gambia today held a meeting to develop a strategic plan that will focus on research, staff exchange, and community services. The UTG's Deputy Vice Chancellor of Academics talks about the initiative.
In most of these areas, they have experts. So if we can team up, then we will be able to rely from our neighbors here and there they will rely on us on certain things, certain areas, and we will do the same thing. So we can team up also to be doing some research together among other issues. That's the objective, South-South cooperation, bringing it back home.
Through collaboration, the consortium will also include a conference of vice-chancellors from the universities to formulate policy directives to tackle their common challenges. A significant objective of any university is exploring academics and provide solutions to socio-economic and cultural realities. In recognition of this, the universities will harness ties and the academic potential of successful development for their countries.
So that's the ultimate objective, once again, to go back to our core values of teaching, research, and community services, and for the interest of the community. Our research cannot be confined in our classroom. Our research must be useful, and that's what we are trying to do to remind ourselves, and through this regional cooperation.
Leading on this initiative is the University of Assane Sekeda Ziguinchor, who have visited and held similar meetings with some of the other 3 universities that will form the consortium. Professor Alassane Diatta is the head of the delegation and a vice-chancellor of research of the Senegalese University. Professor Diatta believes that reaching common ground for development in the sub-region and unity are the cornerstones towards accomplishment of their goal. The vice-chancellor of the University of the Gambia, Professor Fahir Anjum, is grateful to the initiative and expresses optimism that the partnership and cooperation among the universities is of immense importance. He also assures the delegation of the UTG's support for a mutually beneficial and productive partnership. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, QTV News.
Now time to take another short break, but when we come back, we have international news and sports news for you.
Dang doon xalaat pour am yére bu nice boy sol pour ajuma bi mbaate yeneen xewi kon ñu ne leen Kara Creation benn lañ ci réew mi ñëw nañ pour rek safaral seen jafe-jafe ci wàllum sol kon Kara Creation wax leen noo ko buggee rek ñu ñëwal la ko ci noo ko buggee kon ñu ne la Kara Creation am nañ bépp façon piis boo bugga te it am nañ ay xaftaan yu ñëw ba pare pour rek ngeen mun a kontaan kon ñu ne leen Kara Creation seeti leen foofu sa Serekunda ñu ngi jàkkaarloo ak Black Market bi balaa police station bi mun nga leen a call si 5189 189 5189 189 Kara Creation, we provide quality.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is QTV News. Now on to international news. Interpol on Monday said drugs worth nearly 100 million euros were seized in Africa and the Middle East during a large international police operation in March and April. More in this report by Abibatu Sise, rather.
Interpol, in a joint operation with customs and police officials from 41 countries, have arrested 287 people in Africa and in the Middle East. In Niger warehouses, authorities seized 17 tons of cannabis resins worth around $37 million. Interpol said the drugs had been shipped from Lebanon to Togo and after being trucked to Niger and were destined for Libya. It was the largest drug bust in the history of West Africa. The head of Libya's Interpol National Central Bureau, Brigadier General Adel Ben Talib, said there has been an increase in drug traffickers using Libya as a transshipment point, including for drugs from as far as South America. In South Africa, police seized 1,000 cocaine bricks worth around 32 million euros from a fishing vessel and arrested 10 people. Interpol said it was also one of South Africa's largest drug busts. In addition, more than 4.5 million tablets of tramadol, a powerful opioid, diverted from its medical purpose, 10,000 steroids, and 200 kilos of amphetamines were recovered during the operation. Police also found living pangolins a protected animal species, vehicles, rough diamonds, and contraband cigarettes. Interpol says the results of these two operations demonstrate the vast scale of the trade in illicit drugs, contraband goods, and its international nature. Africa has recorded many record busts in recent years, and it's seen as a transit route for illegal drugs from South America to Europe. In September 2019, in nearby Guinea-Bissau, police announced they had seized more than 1.8 tons of cocaine hidden in flour bags in the biggest seizure in the country's history. In January 2021, large amounts of suspected cocaine, worth an estimated $88 million, were also seized in the Gambia, believed to be on transit, bound for Europe. At the time, it was described as the largest ever drug seizure in the country's history. For QTV News, I am Abibatu Sise.
Still in international news, finally, Sudan may be able to lift a financial burden which looked likely to hamper the country's recovery. This is after the French government offered to lend the country $1.5 billion. The offer came following the Sudan president's talks with the French counterpart, or with his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, in the French capital. More in this report by Ajibintu Drame.
The offer came after the pairs meeting before a conference to hold talks on how to help Sudan's dire economic crisis. Although the country is rich in oil and mining resources, it is drowning in debt and inflation is at 300%. This is after theft and mismanagement of the country's resources. The coronavirus pandemic has also hit Sudan's economy hard. The French government has said it will lend Sudan $1.5 billion to enable the heavily in-debt country to pay off its arrears to the International Monetary Fund. This was announced by the French Economy Minister, Bruno Le Maire, on Monday. However, the IMF members must pledge to cover the $1.3 billion in arrears for the IMF to pay the bridge loan back. The grant by the French government is expected to be confirmed by President Macron at a Paris summit on Monday. Macron had made a promise to Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok during his visit to France in September 2019, 6 months after the revolution that ousted Bashir from power and ended his 3-decade rule. The move could allow Sudan to re-enter the international financial circuits and attract investors. It may also pave the way for much of Sudan's $50 billion external debts to be forgiven under the IMF and World Bank's heavily indebted poor country scheme. The President-Pairs meeting also comes as Egypt tries to help mediate an end to the escalating conflict in Gaza between Israel and the Palestinians. The Paris Conference for African Leaders is meant to revive and address the continent's economies that have been hit hard by the pandemic. Sudan Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has already settled the World Bank arrears, those of the African Development Bank, and in Paris, they hope to settle the International Monetary Fund arrears. Paris also is home to the Paris Club, our biggest creditors, and we will be discussing debt relief with them, Hamdok said. In the past 2 years, Hamdok and his government have pushed to rebuild the crippled economy and end Sudan's international isolation. The move by France is seen by many as a significant building block in the rebuilding process. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
Time to bring you sports. Young athletes in Sukuta held the final of their 3-day athletics competition on Monday at the Dembadu Stadium. More in this report. In the absence of National Athletics Championship, Sukuta Athletics team brought together various young athletes for a competitive encounter. Track and field events such as 100 meters, long jump and shot put were among the categories, where the athletes were able to test themselves against others. Pairamang Cham is the coordinator of the competition.
Well, we create this fund in order to promote young athletes and to build courage in them. Hence, since last academy, we don't have any competitions.
After Brikama Athletics Club organized a similar competition, these young athletes from Sukuta now had an avenue to show their skills and prepare for future national competitions. It was also an opportunity to scout the best among them for the national athletics team.
I run with my colleague, they passed me and I was sitting, I'm not training. They were training, they performed well and I like it.
As the indefinite suspension on school athletics remains in place, more and more unofficial athletics competitions are being organized, and often the participants are students. When will the ban on school sports be lifted? After all, top-level football has resumed to enthusiastic crowds. Surely, the athletics suspension ought to be lifted. Mamadou Gajaga, QTV News. Before we end this bulletin of the news, let's have a quick look at our main news stories. The Gambia 2019-2020 Demographics and Health Survey findings, an important tool for planning, was launched today at an event attended by the Vice President and government ministers. The Director of Communications at the Independent Electoral Commission told QTV that preparations were at an advanced stage for the commencement of the voter registration. In international news, the International Criminal Police Organization Interpol revealed details of huge drug seizures in Africa and the Middle East. And in sports news, in the absence of school sporting competitions, we heard how some athletes were finally returning to competitive sports. That's all we have for you in this bulletin of the news. Thank you very much for watching, but don't forget, coming up next is State of Affairs. You would enjoy it.